Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Friday, the 21st of January. With Robert Murray McShane, today we read Acts 21, the continuation of the story of Paul's journey down toward Jerusalem. I was struck by verse 8, where we read, Luke recording, leaving the next day, we reached Caesarea and stayed at the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. Now that struck me because Philip was one of the people elected by the community as one of the first deacons to look after the distribution of food, particularly to the Greek-speaking believers early on. When the church was persecuted and scattered, he ended up in Samaria and he preached the gospel and preached so effectively that the whole city virtually was converted. And there's this great revival, so much so that Peter and John were sent from Jerusalem to help out and to see what was going on. And they supported and encouraged him in what he was doing, and they supported the church there. Immediately after that, he went off to the desert road, came across the Ethiopian eunuch, who he converted, and then we're told Philip traveled about and ended up at Caesarea. We're not told what happened in between his meeting of the Ethiopian eunuch and this point. He doesn't occur. They don't mention him in Acts again. And in the rest of Scripture, he isn't mentioned either. So what he was doing in Caesarea, we do not know. I suspect he was just being a Christian. Had he been a great, powerful evangelist and been turning Caesarea upside down, I'm convinced that would have made its way into Scripture in some way or other. That's always difficult to argue from the silences of Scripture. But I look at this and I think, to me it sounds like he was used by God mightily, and that came to an end. And now he was just staying in Caesarea, and his next job was to be a host to Paul and Luke and those traveling with him. And our lives are like that. We have seasons, and so often people get stuck in a season. We want to stay in Samaria because look how good it is. But God so often wants us to move on. And as I look back on my life, I can see seasons when I was at school and then at university and straight after university during national service and then young adult life as you started working. But you move on. You don't stay there, and you move on to new things. And sometimes we move from being the great evangelist of Samaria, converting everybody, to being somebody that is just a host of other people. Depending on what the season is. But we do need to remember that seasons are not age-bound, because God called Abraham at the age of 75, and that's where the work of God in his life began. So we're never too old for God to start using us in new ways. But we must never get stuck in old ways. We must always be prepared to move on into new things, even if they're not dramatic, even if they're just gentle, supporting, encouraging, being with people. That too is a ministry, and that too God works through. And here we have Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. His job now is to host 2 of the new apostles in their ministry. So be encouraged that God continues to use us even as life moves on and situations change. God doesn't. That's our blessing.